Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Olarinde. More soldiers stranded in the Azovstal steelworks appear to be surrendering to Russia after being holed up in the besieged Mariupol city. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, nearly 800 fighters have surrendered over the last day. The evacuation marks the likely end of the battle for the southern Ukrainian port city, which lies in ruins after weeks of relentless Russian bombardment. Or elsewhere in Ukraine, the first trial in Kiev of a Russian soldier accused of war crimes has resumed, as the 21-year-old is asking for forgiveness from the widow of the man he killed. His trial heard that he was ordered to kill the civilian. Also, elsewhere, a Ukrainian official says 4 people have been killed by Russian shelling in Severodonetsk, and a civilian has been killed in the shelling of a village in Russia near the border with Ukraine.
Russia's defense ministry says that 771 Ukrainian fighters had surrendered from the Azovstal steelworks in the devastated Ukrainian city of Mariupol in the last 24 hours. Some of the men purported to be surrendered Ukrainian fighters from the Azov regiment could be seen with crutches and eye patches in the footage released by the ministry. Russia's defense ministry released new footage on Thursday of what it claims are Ukrainian soldiers from a besieged steel plant. In the video, some of the men that appear to be in a room with bunk beds are speaking on camera about the conditions of their detention. They say they have been given food and housing and are being treated well. It's not possible to establish if the men were speaking freely.
Help has been given to my fellow officers. I was assured that everything was good. The seriously wounded were taken out, at least at the first stage where I was. I asked. They assured me that everything was fine, that they did the bandages for them. So I hope that some kind of treatment will continue.
Mariupol is the biggest city Russia has captured so far and allows Russian President Vladimir Putin to claim a rare victory in the war. In the meantime, a Russian soldier accused of war crime on Thursday apologized in court to the widow of a man he's accused of killing in cold blood. In a trial that has huge symbolic importance for Kiev, the 21-year-old Russian tank commander is charged with murdering the unarmed 62-year-old civilian in the northeastern Ukrainian village of Chupakivka on February 28th. On Wednesday, he pleaded guilty and, if convicted, could be sentenced to life in prison. Meanwhile, more sanctions continue to hit Russia, the latest coming from the UK against the Russian airline sector. Britain said it was introducing new sanctions against state-owned Aeroflot, Ural Airlines and Rossiya Airlines to prevent them from selling their unused landing slots at British airports. The British government says it estimated the landing slots were worth £50 million. On a lighter note, President Vladimir Zelensky addressed Ukrainians in a video message on Thursday to wish them health on Vyshyvanka Day, the day of the traditional embroidered shirt. Still photographs taken in Lviv on Thursday showed women dancing and people wearing the Vyshyvanka, which is an integral part of the national Ukrainian costume. Babies also joined the Embroidery Day celebrations. Newborns in the Odessa Regional Maternity Hospital received their first presents. Girls were given shirts with red ornaments, boys with blue.
The VOA's Anna Chernikova is in Kiev for us now. She joins us to discuss more about today's war crimes trial and many other issues. Hello, Anna. Thank you for speaking to us.
Hello. Yeah, so today was another day of the trial, of the first trial of the Russian soldier. What we know so far that he really asked for apologize. He basically said that he pleaded guilty, and he said that he was ordered to kill the civilian. What he said exactly to the widow of the victim, I would quote, he said, "I admit that you will not be able to forgive me, but I apologize," end of quote. So the court haven't say anything final today as of now, but what we know is that the prosecutor is asking for a lifelong detention for the soldier. the widow is also asking for a lifelong term, but again, she highlighted that she doesn't mind if Mr. Shishimarin would be exchanged for the Mariupol defenders. So we will see how all this all will go. What we found out today after the testimony of the widow and of Vadim Shishmarin, the 21-year-old Russian soldier. So Mr. Shishmarin said that he and another 4 soldiers were going through one of the villages in Suma region. They were going with a stolen car that they stolen previously from another Ukrainian civilian who managed to escape the Russian soldiers. When they saw the victim, they saw him talking on the phone, and they decided that this is kind of a danger to them, and basically they shoot him because they were afraid that he might be talking to Ukrainian soldiers. This is again what he said to the court. The widow, from her own position, also testified because she saw how all this happened. She saw it from the garden of the building. So she told that when her husband was out, she heard that the shot, and he got to the garden, and he saw the car with Mr. Shishmarin shooting. Then she hid it, and when the car left, she looked again at the street, and she saw her husband lying dead at the street. This is what we know for now, and we will see how the procedure will continue.
So do we know how long, this might take? And are there any other war crimes soldiers that are, awaiting trial?
What we know for now that there are definitely another soldiers waiting trial, and there are plans for this trial. Again, we don't know the details yet because, of course, it's under the brief of secret. But I think that we should expect more. In terms of this particular trial, also there were no official information on when it should end, but it's definitely coming to an end because, most of the details are now revealed.
All right, let's talk about the Azov soldiers that, been stranded in Mariupol. Russia says many more of those soldiers have surrendered, nearly 800, and they released the footage showing those men in bunk beds. What does Ukraine make of this?
The Russian side is claiming that they have surrendered. However, Ukrainian side is highlighting that this is evacuation operation because this operation was organized together with the Red Cross and together with the UN. So this is basically was a compromise because situation at Azovstal was very critical for the past couple of months already. Officially, Ukrainian officials do not comment. Do not comment much on this. What we know and what they're saying that evacuation procedure is ongoing. So this it hasn't ended yet, and more soldiers should be evacuated. Some soldiers, still Ukrainian soldiers, remain at the plant. We don't know exactly the amount, but they are there. What we know confirmed from the Ukrainian officials that 53 seriously injured soldiers have been evacuated to Novoazovsk, which is occupied territory by Russia in the Donetsk region, and another 211 have been evacuated to Olenivka. It's another also occupied town in Donetsk region. Also, we know for sure that yesterday another 7 buses were evacuated with soldiers inside, and we don't know the exact number. However, today we got certain updates from the Red Cross International, from the International Committee of the Red Cross. So they said that they have already recorded and they have already registered, registered would be the correct word, hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers who have been evacuated from the Azovstal plant. They also said that they maintain very deep and confidential negotiation with both sides. And also they confirmed that they have visited the soldiers today. They went to check those soldiers who are now located at Olenivka. It's what I said before, more of the soldiers are there. And they checked their conditions there. And again, not particular details have been revealed because this is a secret and confidential information.
All right then, Anna. I see you have an embroidered shirt on. It's Embroidered Shirt Day today. Happy Embroidered Shirt Day today.
Yes, this is a very special holiday here in Ukraine. And, this year is very special indeed. Thank you.
All right then, Anna Chernikova, VOA's correspondent there in Kyiv, Ukraine. U.S. President Joe Biden has welcomed Finnish President Sauli Niinisto and Swedish Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson to the White House. This after the leaders of both Nordic nations submitted NATO applications. Sweden and Finland's bids to join NATO come in response to Russia's war on Ukraine, which sparked security concerns across the region. While their moves to join the alliance mark a dramatic evolution in European security and geopolitics. The leaders are scheduled to hold a meeting in the cabinet room of the White House and will also deliver remarks from the Rose Garden. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan had earlier told reporters that the meeting with the leaders in Washington will allow the three nations to coordinate on the path forward and compare notes on the move. The U.S. Embassy in Kyiv has reopened after a 3-month closure due to Russia's February 24 invasion of Ukraine. Embassy spokesperson Daniel Langenkamp said operations are resuming, and this was shortly before the U.S. flag was raised above the embassy. A small number of diplomats are expected to return initially to staff the mission. Consular operations will not resume immediately, and no travel advisory from the State Department remains in place across Ukraine. The U.S. Embassy closed on February 14, 10 days before Russia launched a full-scale invasion. Embassy staff were said to have spent the first 2 months of the war in Poland. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says he is in intense contact with Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, and the United States and EU in an effort to restore Ukrainian grain export as a global food crisis worsens. Addressing a food security meeting at the United Nations hosted by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Mr. Guterres appealed to Russia to allow the safe and secure export of grain stored in Ukrainian ports, and for Russian food and fertilizers to have full and unrestricted access to world markets.
The Russian invasion in Ukraine is amplifying and accelerating all these factors: climate change, COVID-19, and inequality. It threatens to tip tens of millions of people over the edge into food insecurity, followed by malnutrition, mass hunger and famine in a crisis that could last for years.
Governments and international organizations can also come together to compel the Russian Federation to create corridors so that food and other vital supplies can safely leave Ukraine by land or by sea. There are an estimated 22 million tons of grain sitting in silos in Ukraine right now, food that could immediately go toward helping those in need if it can simply get out of the country. Some have tried to blame the sanctions imposed on the Russian Federation by the United States and many other countries for worsening this crisis. This is false. When we impose sanctions on Russia in order to end the war as quickly as possible, we deliberately and carefully created exceptions for agricultural goods and fertilizer. We're working every day to get countries any information or assistance they need to ensure that sanctions are not preventing food or fertilizer from leaving Russia or anywhere else.
The latest United Nations forecast says the war in Ukraine has upended the fragile economic recovery from the pandemic, triggering a devastating humanitarian crisis in Europe, increasing food and commodity prices, and globally exacerbating inflationary pressures. We're speaking to journalists in New York. Director of Economic Analysis and Policy Division at the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs informed that global economic growth prospects have changed dramatically since the last forecast in January, when a 4% growth was expected. That forecast has now been adjusted to just 3.1%.
So the war in Ukraine has upended a fragile economic recovery from the pandemic. Global economic growth prospects have changed dramatically since our last forecast in January, when we were expecting 4% growth in 2022. We are now revising this global growth forecast to just 3.1%. This deterioration in growth prospects is broad-based, including for the world's largest economies, the United States, the European Union, China, and many developing countries. There are uncertainties in this forecast, including significant downside risks, such as those due to the length of the war, the continuance of the pandemic, or adverse shocks from climate change. But for now, we already see economic repercussions playing out globally through multiple channels. One of these is the surging prices in food, energy, and other commodities that are driving inflation. Global inflation, we are projecting, will increase to 6.7% in 2022, which is twice the average of 2.9% during the past decade. Inflation is rising in many countries, an additional challenge to an inclusive recovery, as it disproportionately affects low-income households. Food inflation is worsening food insecurity, pushing many below the poverty line, and policy responses to rising inflation can have additional knock-on effects in developing countries, as the report discusses.
This is an opportunity for ramp up or global climate action, basically to make sure that we don't restart drilling and the world economy actually takes this as an opportunity to invest in renewables and to make sure that we don't deviate from the path of that we had before the crisis, before the pandemic, and then the Ukraine crisis. And that commitment needs to be there and strengthened this time of the global crisis.
Still to come on The World Today. UK public health expert says global spread of monkeypox is a cause for alarm but not panic. The suspected cases are reported in Britain, Portugal, Spain and the United States. And also we have more on Africa's COVID vaccination.